entering the Mayo experience.
Mayo experience. Mayo experience. Mayo experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by DraftKings. The Elite Eight of the best sitcom bracket is now open for voting. If you want to vote, go to @the PME, check out the pinned tweet. You can get it up there, or you can just hit the link that's down in the description right now, because we've narrowed it down. A field of 64 down to 8. Once again, if you don't like the seedings or like the shows that entered the bracket, it wasn't me who did it. You can go and check out the previous shows that we've done where we go over the snubs, the terrible seedings by region. Sia Najad is the one who did all of this, put together all the hard work. It's no fun putting together a bracket, hence why I didn't do it, why he did it. I just wanted to talk about it and get mad at him, although Garion Thorne is joining me again to talk about all this. But I feel like of the 8 shows remaining, it's hard to argue against any of them.
Yeah, I would say if you just sort of pulled me at the start, and I mean, obviously it's different between what I would necessarily vote for versus what I would think would make it through. These are all huge shows, just like critically acclaimed, and that's its own kind of bucket, but these are just massive shows that have been really sort of defining the culture of the last 20, 25 years. So none of these are a shock.
No. And like, listen, when we did the polling, like some older shows snuck into it, but people were like, why isn't MASH on? It's like most people were not alive who were voting in this. We're not alive for like 20 years past the finale of MASH. It's really hard to vote on something that people have absolutely. And then when it would like lose to like Full House in the first round or something, that's even worse. So just not having it in the bracket probably works out a little bit better. Like there's animated shows in here. We've had all these discussions. So once again, go check out the Pat Mayo Experience audio podcast feed if you prefer just to listen to it and walk around, or on the Mayo Media YouTube page. Smash the like and sub to the channel while you're here, while you go back and check out those old shows after this one, and give me your winner of the remaining 8. The remaining 8 right now, and we're going to go through each of the shows. And I made it's not necessarily a best 3 episodes list, but they were the first 3 episodes that sprung to my mind list. And I'm sure once we start talking about it, it's like, oh shit, I forgot about that one. It's not the definitive ranking of the best 3. I'd have to spend way more time thinking about that. It's just the ones that instantly pop to my mind. So Pat Mayo favorites, maybe not necessarily the best, but the ones that stuck with me the longest. So in the West region, we have the number 1 seed Seinfeld taking on the number 3 seed Scrubs in the Elite 8. On the other side of that bracket, in the Midwest, these two, actually, no, that's not right, is it? No. Yeah, this is right. They will be facing the winner of underseeded Curb Your Enthusiasm, which was a 5 seed, and horrendously underseeded Arrested Development, which was an 11 seed. Sorry, Friends as a 1 seed. Didn't work out for you. Like, Friends got absolutely smoked by Curb, which I was so happy to see. In the South region, South Park versus The Simpsons, which is going to be a very fun vote. In the bottom left, it's Frasier against The Office. Frasier is the 1 seed, Office is the 2 seed, but we all know, Garion, The Office has steamrolled it just steamrolled Family Guy, which I thought would have put up some sort of fight. Frasier has no chance.
Yeah, I mean, if the internet the last 15 years has taught us anything, it's that it's weird. I almost, going back and like thinking about my favorite episodes of The Office today, I was just sort of reminiscing about how much I enjoyed the initial airing of The Office. And now I almost have this weird disdain for it because so many people almost use it like a personality. It's just such a big show, and it's so just beloved by this sect of people that when it starts taking out other internet darlings, like you said, Family Guy, and doing it so decisively, I'm always hesitant to just say this. It's a foregone conclusion in these things, but it really does seem like The Office is got to be the front runner at this point.
I think Seinfeld's still the front runner. I think people are just very nostalgic, although I could see a world where if Curb gets through and it's Curb versus Seinfeld, that the internet might just go with Curb in that matchup, and we'll see. You know, the Battle of Larry David might be where it ends up going, but I think Seinfeld is still. You might be right. Office probably is. It's tough because these shows are all really good. I would vote for Frasier over The Office, but I'm on the losing side of that.
I mean, do you remember? I think it was The Ringer did a best television character bracket probably 5 or 6 years ago.
Did we talk about it?
We might have.
I remember us talking about the best reality TV characters of all time.
Yes,
And I think
that was.
CT from the challenge won. But the answer is the situation.
I agree. That though was another ringer based bracket, and there's such a heavy challenge bias in all of their work that it wasn't. I think it was CT against Bananas in the final.
Well, I mean, let's not say that the Mayo Media Network isn't a very challenge heavy network. I mean, I covered the show. It's basically the only show I've ever done recaps of, like, on an annual basis. But
that is true.
The situation was a legit phenomenon.
Oh yeah, I mean, I had a situation bobblehead that I believe I won at the one of the CSM Christmas parties, right at the heyday.
Do you remember the situation like rap song?
Yeah.
So,
DJ Pauly D is going to be appearing at like a Toronto-based bar in a week.
Awesome.
Still has the exact same haircut. I think he's still beating the beat up. I mean, it's going to be great.
He's like actually he has like a residency in Vegas. Like, dude prints money now. Whereas I remember I was in college. No, I was just out of college. The first season of Jersey Shore. And the situation did a bar appearance at a bar near me. And I think he got paid like $25K to show up for 3 hours. That's how hot Jersey Shore was.
It was a phenomenon. I mean, look, they're still cashing those checks. They're still doing the reunion shows. But I was going to say, so they did this best character bracket, and I think they had Cartman as like a 13 seed.
Ooh. Oh, we did talk about this and how outrageous that was.
Yeah, but he absolutely dominated the voting process and won handily. And it was just so funny to have these like very sort of up their own butt TV writers have to continuously write these blurb updates about how Cartman smashed, Don Draper in the round of 16 and just not understanding how the internet works, like not understanding why, like, again, a defining character of our generation, whether you not want to admit it or not, could possibly be besting Don Draper. And it's like, do you realize how many people have watched South Park and how not that many people have watched Mad Men? Like, do you know how television and pop culture works?
It's funny because that was always the Office thing for so many years. Like, no one watched The Office when it was on. I guess by today's rating standards, they did. But after Friends went off the air, that Thursday night block on NBC, like, you and I really enjoyed it. But I think like they used to do like 3.5 million to 7 million, somewhere in that range between It, Community, 30 Rock, and Parks and Rec, like all great shows. But it's not like, oh man, I need to stop what I'm doing. The Office is coming on. It really gained all of this. Was it the first big Netflix, like big property that Netflix bought that just, it became instantly rewatchable?
I think so. I mean, I can remember the streaming rights to that being so incredibly expensive, and then obviously gets dwarfed by Friends, but that's only because it was later on in the process. This is kind of the quarterback contract debate for television streaming rights. It's just going to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But yeah, there was a weird time, and kind of bringing this back to Scrubs even, but there was their separation. Everyone in their heads kind of goes like, oh yeah, Friends, Seinfeld, right into 30 Rock and The Office. No. There was that weird sort of like early aughts NBC Thursday night comedy block that was Scrubs. It was My Name is Earl.
Yeah, which didn't make the bracket. Like, people got at me like, man, what? And again, I didn't make the bracket, but they're like, man, My Name is Earl isn't on here. I was like, yeah, it shouldn't be. It's fucking terrible.
I mean, I watched it from time to time. It wasn't bad. But...
It's bad. Well, like, there was someone complaining to me today. It's like, oh my God, the league should have won this. Like, the league should not have won this.
No.
The fact that the league won a round is like terrible.
Yeah. I mean, the league in completely unscripted shows, very, very great showing for the league, I would say.
Yeah, the league made 2 rounds. The league beat Cheers.
Yeah, but again, that's a reflection of the times.
I understand, but it's just like, if it was another show, maybe, but like the league's okay. It's a very okay show.
Yeah, it's surprising. I don't know if it's just like Nick Kroll and Jason Mantzoukas kind of blowing up after that, and maybe there's some like, I don't know, weird sort of sentimentality about that being kind of their first big show. Seth Rogen popped in for a couple episodes. That was fun.
It could be that this is primarily a football and golf channel, and people voting in this are usually viewers of this show who probably love fantasy football, That makes more sense to me as an explanation.
Yeah, that's probably the right explanation.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about this. It's Seinfeld versus Scrubs. Seinfeld's going to win. This we know.
Mhm.
But I want to get your sense of what are your favorite Seinfeld episodes? Because I'm trying to think of like, I think the contest is kind of collectively known as the best
Yeah.
Seinfeld episode, but it's not my favorite Seinfeld episode. I'm actually very prone to Elaine episodes. I find them to be the funniest.
So I'm taking a similar route here, although this sort of tests a conversation we've had for years, which is, for anyone who doesn't know, Tim's favorite character on The Office is Creed. And Tim has the theory that Creed could have his own show, and Tim would watch it all the time, and it would be great because how could you not love Creed? I would say that Frank Costanza is a more important character to the longevity of Seinfeld than Creed is as the 13th banana on The Office. But generally speaking, as I was going through Seinfeld episodes, I found myself drawn to Frank Costanza episodes just because I love Jerry Stiller so much. So I think, like, obviously you're going to get people who bring up Festivus, but the fatigues, just like his old war stories where he's having a flashback, but they've taken no effort to de-age him at all. He just looks like an old man
In the Korean War?
in the Korean War. So that's one I was definitely drawn to. I mean, obviously the contest. I do love that episode. I love the one, I can't remember what it's called, but the one where they're like stuck in that huge traffic jam. And it's like a bottle episode, but on a highway.
Oh, is it? I know. Is that Puerto Rican Day?
Yeah, it's the Puerto Rican Day.
In the parade. That's like the second to last episode.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So
yeah,
I went with just, it's like characters that pop out in my mind. And I was trying to remember which episode it was when Elaine got Ned Isakoff banned at Hop Sings, which is still probably the single funniest thing in the history of the show. That's from the race episode when Jerry has to race the guy.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That's the other plot going on.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. We'll talk about this a little bit more later, I think, when we get to like Arrested, because that was sort of a really hard one for me to
identify an episode.
Yeah, even separate plot points or jokes into a particular episode. But that's one thing that the Larry David shows do so well, is there's just such clear plot points. And I know, like, it's ironic because this was the Friends title structure, but Seinfeld really is like, oh, the one with the soup Nazi, the one with the beached whale, the one where George drives the World Series trophy in the parking lot. Like, it really just has such immediate plot point beats in your head that it's great for an exercise like this.
I almost put the English Patient on here just based on how much Elaine hated the English Patient.
Mm-hmm.
And me being in that scenario, not necessarily with the English Patient, but with things that people really like. And I'm like, I don't get it. I don't find this good at all. And just feeling like you're just so alone in the world. And then being forced to go see these things because everyone needs to go see it.
Yeah.
I went with the race and I went with the pen. And this doesn't feature George or Kramer. It's when Elaine stays with Jerry at Jerry's parents in Florida and Jerry gets the upside down space pen and Elaine takes too many painkillers after they end up they go scuba diving. Elaine throws her back out from sleeping on the couch and has to take all the painkillers. And Jerry has like the broken blood vessels in his eye. And she's just doing Streetcar Named Desire after meeting Aunt Stella when Jerry's trying to do his stand-up. It is a fucking fantastic episode.
I mean, there's just so many good ones. That's really the problem when we narrow it down to this point. It's like you said, you'd really have to spend a lot of time going through season by season, trying to figure out what your favorites are. But this is more just things that came to my mind today.
Yeah, that's what I think that people in the comment section should do that too. Like, if you want to pick, you can do all 8 of these shows or just even one of the shows. Like, what's the one thing that pops to your mind from the years of you watching these shows? And like I said, it doesn't need to be the best episode. It doesn't even need to be your favorite episode, but it has like your favorite moment in it that you really remember the most. The other one I went with is the library one, when Kramer starts dating the librarian, but Bookman ends up coming to Jerry's apartment. And just like, I love Philip Baker Hall I first saw him in Boogie Nights, and then I saw this episode of Seinfeld, in syndication. He's also awesome on Curb as the doctor. He's like, you got to call the service. Why aren't you calling this? You know who would make this mistake? The service.
I mean, that's just one of those episodes too, where obviously it's not like Philip Baker Hall is a household name. He's not like this A-list actor by any means, but he's just carved out such an amazing career for himself that it almost seems weird he'd be on, a sixth season episode of this sitcom, but he's just phenomenal in that role. He's so perfect. I mean, he's typecast in a weird way, but he's just so good at that character and at that role. It's a fantastic episode.
Would you say that he's typecast from his Floyd Gonzoli Boogie Night characters, a man who enjoys lollipops in his mouth and butter in his ass? The best. Yes. He's no longer with us. Oh, that's also the episode where there's the homeless guy in front of the library that George is convinced is his old gym teacher. And it is his old gym teacher. He had those baked bean teeth.
Stanza.
So yeah, I mean, there's how many episodes of Seinfeld are there? Like the entire from Kramer moving to LA and being like accused of being a serial killer, and they have to go out and get him, and the entire that season of them pitching the pilot. Like that's hard for me to pick and choose which of the episodes. I think my favorite one of those is the crazy Joe Davola one when he's dating Elaine, and then Kramer slips it that he's not invited to Jerry's party. He's just a maniac.
Yeah, but that's interesting though that you say you can't figure out your favorite of those ones, because that was a rare example of serialized storytelling in Seinfeld, which we very rarely got. Which is again the reason why it's so hard to differentiate Arrested, just because all it is a circle in terms of an episode. They just but there's so many. Like there's the parking spot one, obviously. Like you could play the hits for Seinfeld, but yeah, 200 episodes or so to choose from. I can see why people constantly go back to the contest. I think that one though is like in a weird way, maybe I respect just the writing of it more than the actual entertainment value of the episode. Like it's a great episode, don't get me wrong, but I think it's talked about more now because of how sort of just not insane the writing of that episode would be, but I guess that for the 90s, yeah, just sort of bridging that topic at all.
Yeah, not what you expected to see primetime NBC in 1994.
No, not really.
Do you think Seinfeld still works? Like, because I still watch it in syndication. I still find it hilarious. It doesn't seem, it's weird 90s dated in terms of its humor, but although they don't have phones or, things that now exist 30 years in the future, it doesn't feel dated on like a day-to-day type thing where some other shows do.
No. And again, I think that really speaks to almost every single episode being character driven and not plot driven, generally speaking. Even plot would be about some sort of weird grudge with like you said, it's odd to go back and watch it. It is clearly a 90s show. Although I was even seeing something yesterday that apparently people think of Seinfeld as this very, very strange, like fashion forward type show. Like that like Kramer and Elaine and even George in a weird way just had like outfits that are sort of commonplace now. And I at the start of the video, I'm like, there's no way this is going to convince me of this. And then by the end of it, I was like, you know what? Yeah, a lot of people do dress like George. I guess that's a thing.
Well, Kramer just looks like he exclusively shops at thrift shops.
And so there you go.
So that tracks in 2023. But I had this, I remember people getting very mad at me because, obviously I was infringing on what they think. But I feel like if you watch Seinfeld and Kramer is your favorite character, you're watching it wrong.
Yeah. I mean, he's the zest. I mean, it's not the Creed take, but it's definitely in that vein.
Yeah, like
I like the guy who comes in and like
throws some heat.
Yeah, it's like if you think the closer is the most important person on your favorite baseball team.
I that's a very good way to put it. Like, it's not that I don't like Kramer, but the other three carry the show.
Exactly.
Where Kramer gets to pop in and out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's Seinfeld. Let's get to Scrubs, its opponent, and it's, this is the last probably chance we'll get to talk about Scrubs as it pertains to this bracket. Now, my 3 for this. So we were briefly chatting about Scrubs before we came on. It was the first show that my wife and I watched through like together. I mean, we watched a ton of shows since, but like it was the first comedy we sat down to watch together. We had both seen it before, but hadn't seen it in ages. It was probably like 7-8 years ago. I think we watched it twice more since through. Scrubs is amazing. And it's like a real life cartoon, which is nice. Something that 30 Rock would, I think, perfect a little bit later on in the terms of its sensibility.
It's a show when you find out that some writers from Family Guy were a very integral part of the Scrubs writing process. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I would 100% agree. I prefer how they did it in Scrubs.
I agree to that 100%. But like the DNA of the cutaway joke is so heavily utilized in Scrubs, and you could argue by the 5th, 6th, and 7th seasons, probably too much.
Yeah.
But the DNA is really there. But I agree with you. I think the more grounded seasons, the first 4 or 5, do that shtick really, really well.
So it's really weird to look back on it when I have my 3 like memorable episodes of Scrubs. Maybe that's the way I'll phrase that in the SEO for the title. 3 most memorable episodes, which is going to be completely subjective in this sense, because it's you and I talking about it. Again, I want to hear from you guys down in the comment section. They're all like kind of serious episodes, which is not anything you can say about any of the other shows remaining. Well,
look, I know some doctors. My sister is a doctor, and I know this gets thrown around a lot.
You know Tim.
But I do know Tim. I mean, most doctors will tell you by a pretty wide margin, this is like the most accurate medical show on television, which seems strange because it's a 22-minute sitcom, but it seems like they really took the time to like make it real. And because of that, and I agree, the 3 episodes I've written down are pretty serious episodes. I bet we have crossover here.
I bet we have 2 of the same. It would be my guess. So I have the one where Brendan Fraser dies.
Yep.
Which is an awesome episode.
Just a great episode, yeah.
And then the one where Nicole Sullivan dies and they have to use her organs. That's my screw up and my lunch. And then I also had the season premiere of season 2. The one where the guy from Men at Work is just constantly playing guitar throughout the entire episode.
Right. Yeah, that's a good one too. I had my screw up, I had my lunch, and I had My Old Lady, which is I think it's
like the 4th episode of the series, isn't it?
Yeah. And it does a really good job. Again, I'm a sucker for the subversion of expectations. And that's again for a series in its 4th episode to have a very classic sitcom setup. I believe like the monologue off the top by JD is something like, they teach you in medical school that for every 3 people that come into a hospital, one of those people will die. And he gets a patient, his old lady, Elliot gets a patient, and Turk gets a patient. And again, television has taught you through the years, like, oh, one of these people will die.
Not all of them.
All of them die. And it's moving in a weird way. Like, Bill Lawrence, he knows what he's doing with these things. It's always been one of my favorite episodes.
So I had made this comment to you. You said I guess you're not married yet. Are you married secretly that I don't know about?
No.
You didn't
just engaged for a really long time.
You didn't pull one of those ones where we're like, oh yeah, we actually got married last year. We just didn't tell anyone.
Think about it all the time. Seems cheaper.
But like, yeah, it's not a bad idea actually. I have a friend doing that right now. Like they're spending money on like the sneaky. It's not even sneaky. The most expensive part of the wedding is going to be the dinners that you have to provide for everyone. Mm. Like when they say it's like $100 a plate, $150, $200 a plate, like that's what it costs to feed each of the people. So if you just shrink down the actual eating part and invite very few people to that, and then still have your reception with a giant party, you know who's not complaining that I missed dinner and a bunch of speeches I don't care about? Me.
Yeah. It's kind of removing the boring part of the wedding, really.
Yeah, it's a great way to do it. Like I sat at a wedding where there was 13 speeches once, and I was like, I can't do this. Like this is just outrageous. And they were all really long.
That's not a good time.
No, bad time.
Not such a time.
No, not so much a time. But Scrubs is like the ultimate of all of the shows left on this list, I think. Although The Office might actually fall into this, I wouldn't say more, but pretty close, is that most of these are guy shows.
Yeah.
Primarily.
Is The Simpsons a guy show?
Yeah.
Okay. That's fair.
Yeah, like but I would say that there's probably an even split between fans of, it's like how Friends is primarily a girl show instead of a guy show. It's
Yeah,
not that
no, you're
guys
right.
don't enjoy Friends, but like when you look at the demos, a lot more women enjoy Friends than men enjoy Friends. Whereas the opposite for Seinfeld.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, The Office is probably your most like universally acclaimed show in terms of its like demographics. But yeah, Scrubs would be the only show where, well, I guess The Office has Jim and Pam, but like where there's actual like narrative emotional stakes and character growth. Like a lot of these shows, you really are just like next episode clean slate. So Scrubs sort of stands out amongst this group anyway in terms of that.
Yeah, very much so. But yeah, it's the last we're going to see of Scrubs. I recommend that people, if you and your wife are looking for a show to watch, because it's super snappy as well. Like I know the episodes that we picked were like the more, and it's not even like those episodes themselves are super serious, because they're actually pretty hilarious at the same time too. It's just they pack an emotional wallop when it comes down to it.
Well, again, Brendan Fraser's dead in that episode, but no one knows he's dead till the end. So he's just everyone getting off jokes for the first 20 minutes. It's great.
Like, is Dr. Cox an all-time character?
So I think he also made it sneaky far into that like television character bracket, and people didn't understand why. But yeah, Dr. Cox is, I mean, John C. McGinley's like, he pops up in some prestige movies every now and again. And he's obviously
in every Oliver Stone movie.
Yep. I think he dies in a really fun way in The Rock. But yeah, I mean, just a great performance, a great role. Yeah, a very, like, I think the best character on that show, I would have to say. I love Turk too, but
Turkleton?
Turkleton.
You think my name is Turk Turkleton? Like, even actually, the one thing that stands out to me is when Turk got the phone number, 1-800-CALL-TURK, which was a real number you could call and leave a voicemail to the writers of the show.
I think we should say too, and we were talking about this a little bit before we started this, but with no longer the opportunity to talk about Scrubs, quick shout out to Clone High, which apparently was being made and edited in the same hospital Scrubs was shooting in, because Bill Lawrence was the executive producer on Clone High, knew that Lord and Miller didn't have any money. So he let them use the abandoned mental ward of that hospital because no Scrubs crew wanted to go there because it was creepy.
I can see that being super creepy.
Yeah, I can see that too.
So Miller is Bill Lawrence's brother-in-law, right? Because he's married to Christina Miller, who's on this show.
I don't think they're related, actually.
I thought they were brother and sister. I just assumed they were.
I don't think so.
Really?
I could be wrong about that, but I don't think so.
This might take some Googling. Yeah, I don't have time for that. Let's move to Curb. This was hard.
Yeah.
And I think the three that I went with are not, I mean, I have no sense of what people consider to be like their favorite Curb episode. So I'm just going to rattle these off. Crazy Eyes Killer, number 1. Number 2, Incest Survivor Group, which I guarantee you does not appear on many lists. Number 3, Larry taking the prostitute to the Dodgers game and Funkhauser reserving the seat for his dead dad.
And you know what the crazy thing about that episode is? I'm not sure if you
saved
watched
the guys from jail.
Yeah. No, it was it caught a murderer or something like that. It was insane.
There was a guy who was like tried for murder.
Right, and his alibi
he got exonerated because he was at the game and they had B-roll footage of him.
Yeah. I mean, incredible stuff.
But those are just moments. I barely remember the rest of the episode. Just those things stick out. Like, I forget what it was when Larry stole the flowers from Funkhauser's mom's roadside grave to give to Cheryl. I forget what episode. I can't remember if that's the same one where they got buried with the 5-wood that Larry tried to get back. Can't remember if it was the same one, but just basically anything involving Funkhauser.
Yeah, I mean, Funkhauser's great. I feel like I gravitate like to a lot of JB Smoove episodes. It's just such a funny show, and it's like, obviously the characters are different, but sometimes I even find myself getting like story beats mixed up between Seinfeld and Curb. But obviously Curb is like Seinfeld on steroids. So generally speaking, anything that's like crazy, I'm like, no, that was Curb, not Seinfeld.
Like JB Smoove showing up to Michael Richards' hotel room just like fucking Farrakhan. Did you have a 3?
Oh, did I? I don't think I actually wrote down a 3.
Like the Shaq episode's great, or the one from season 2 when he tries to let all the air out of Thor's tires.
I even honestly, I even like some of the like, not to say there weren't episodes later on that were simple, because I think most Larry David things are a very simple concept that just like grows and grows and grows and grows. But even just like the pants tenting, I think that's like the second or third episode. Like there's just sort of a simplicity to some of those early ones, even where they weren't like, I mean, obviously the celebrity cameos are such an amazing part of Curb because everyone's just so willing and generally just knocks them out of the park. But yeah, some of even those first season episodes are just so fantastic, even though they're not like, there isn't really crazy memorable moments.
Now that we've talked about it, I bet you people consider the Palestinian chicken to be the number 1 episode.
Yeah. Like I did a quick Google, I would say, just like best insert show here episodes, just to kind of see like what the general consensus was. That came up a lot. That was top 3 in a lot of lists.
I could just remember. I completely spaced on the episode. Now remember, it's like, oh yeah, what was the one? I forget what episode it was when they had to do the things for Grout's disease, and Larry just kept saying that it was named after Dick Grout because he was bad at shortstop for the Pirates.
It's so funny too. My mom is from Pittsburgh, and her family big baseball fans. So I received a bunch, like just a old binder of baseball cards at one point, and they were all Dick Groat baseball cards, and I just started laughing hysterically, and no one understood why. It's not worth explaining.
So Arrested Development is what Curb is up against. Cool. I think when we did like what our picks for the actual winner was, I started watching Arrested Development again since like the beginning of this. I don't know if I'd have it as the winner, but is like one of the top 3 shows, like my top 3 favorite shows of all time. But it is incredibly difficult to figure out which episode is actually like the best, because like you said, they all just kind of roll together, and it is the ultimate like binge watch show. Like some people say Breaking Bad or Lost, like Arrested Development just goes.
It's like some of those shows, they say they're great binge watching shows because they're addictive. The thing about Arrested Development is you actually benefit as a viewer if you watch them in binge format. I mean, jokes pay off. And this is really the problem when you try to identify particular episodes. There's so much callback and there's so much repetition in the jokes that, you know, I don't know which Gene Parmesan appearance is my favorite Gene Parmesan appearance. They're all so similar. I don't know which of the hyper literal doctor quotes is my favorite one because they're really hard to identify. I did sort of single out Peer Pressure.
I had that as my number 1 as well.
Okay, just because I do love J. Walter Weatherman.
Walter Weatherman teaching lessons in the Hot Cops.
Yeah.
The Hot Cops is a great running bit throughout the entire thing. Oh, look at them. They're so hot. Oh, it's the police and the construction worker.
Construction worker. Yeah.
So I had that. I have Hot Cops in all caps. The one where Joe breaks into the prison. It's like the third or fourth episode. Mm-hmm. That one's fantastic. And then the one where they have the gala, as Tobias would call it, at the prison for TBA.
Right. Okay. I had Peer Pressure, and then I had the episode. Like, I feel like I had to think about what episode do I reference the most or quote the most, and in a weird way, I do bee quotes all the time.
Bees? Can't have bees in here.
Bees? They don't let you bring bees in here.
Was that later season 1 or was that early season 1?
Sorry?
Was that late season 1?
It was like mid season 1. I think it's like episode 7 or 8.
It's got to tell Dad about my bee business. It's taken off. Essentially, okay, so
Old Bear, love the honey.
Loves the old Big Bear. Loves the honey. So I think we just gotta say, like, Job is just the MVP of the show.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Job is, so Tobias is your Kramer answer.
Yes.
But Job is Oh God. And just even like Hermano. I don't know who this Hermano guy is.
So the other ones that I had on there, no, the prison break-in one, I got those two mixed up. So there's those two. The other one I had was the one where Job is actually the president, and maybe and Michael sing Afternoon Delight at the party, but it's the one where Job is telling everyone how expensive his suit is.
That is a really good one.
That's probably like the most. I was trying to think, what Job thing do I reference most? It's probably that or when he makes the yacht disappear, I sunk it. Or not knowing where Portugal is.
Yeah. Oh man, did you even for a second consider anything outside of season 1 and season 2?
No, I considered Mr. F, the one where it ends. Yeah. It ends with George Michael in the spacesuit and Job creating the mini town for the Japanese investors to look out the window, and the CIA is using Tobias as a plant. Right. He's really the mole. And they have like the Godzilla fight over the little Japanese tiny town.
Is Franklin season 2 or season 3?
Season 2.
Right. Okay. Oh yeah.
So there's something else in that too. Yeah, because that's one. I mean, speaking of Funkhauser, that's when Bob Einstein was being the surrogate for George Sr. They built Tiny Town together. Right.
Okay. Yeah, there's just so many great episodes. But really, of all the shows, I couldn't immediately even tell you like the name of an episode of Arrested Development. Like I just it's really like season 1, season 2, season 3. That's about the only way I can separate Arrested Development.
Does it matter that no one cares about season 4 or 5?
I don't think so.
See, I don't either.
And I honestly think we talked about this, I think, the last time I was on, but I do think the recut version of season 4 is actually like still better than 85% of television. It's just that we hold it in comparison to the first 3 seasons of Arrested Development. Season 5 is not very good.
Is season 5 the one where Michael moves in with George Michael on like campus? Or is that season 4?
I think that's season 4. Yeah, that's season 4.
I may not even watch season 5.
It wasn't great.
It's tough because you can't have them all there. They're too big.
Yeah.
You know what's a snub that we didn't bring up, or maybe we did because it just came back and I started watching it again, was Party Down.
Did we not talk about Party Down?
I can't remember if we did or not. That, and we didn't talk about Archer at all.
Right. Okay.
Which is excellent.
Yeah, Archer's fantastic.
So yeah, I would go. I mean, my vote is Arrested Development over Curb, although I don't see it winning.
Yeah, it's just not quite big enough to win this. But I mean, it's definitely a show now that in a weird way is probably more revered and popular today than it was 20 years ago.
I mean, it got canceled because no one fucking watched it.
That is true.
They put the final episodes in a 4-block set on Fox up against the Olympics that was going on. So I remember watching it at Mount Allison University in college while visiting a friend on a Friday night.
Oh, on a Friday too.
Jeez. Yeah, they dumped it at a 2-hour block on a Friday night. It must have been, what year was the Vancouver Olympics? 2010?
2010, yeah.
So that would have ended in 2006 then.
Right.
Whatever Olympics that was. Not Salt Lake, not Vancouver, whatever. Turin, I think, was the one.
Yeah.
Simpsons versus South Park. We've done a top 5 Simpsons episode in the past. That was like 8 years ago now.
Very long time ago. Yes.
I believe that's actually the first part. That's what ignited the very first Cuss Corner. Cuss Corner 1 has just us talking about The Simpsons. And then we did one on your show, The Rotation.
Right.
Ever think about bringing that show back?
No.
No?
And I, for the life of me, cannot remember what my list would have been, although I assume it's relatively similar. I mean, it's so hard.
Okay, so the 3 I went with, Scorpio, number 1.
I was going to say, You Only Move Twice is 100% your top episode.
Yeah. And number 2 is Homer Badman when he's accused of sexual assault.
Right. Yeah.
And he has to say, here's a photo of Homer Simpson sleeping in his tent, which he says gives him sexual powers.
You'll have to speak up. I'm wearing a towel.
And just the end of, it's like, oh my God, he's a monster. Dad, Groundskeeper Willie was the one who got you off. You haven't listened to that music. It really just foreshadowed where news went.
Yeah, no, it's a little terrifying in that way.
And then I did 22 short films about Springfield.
Right. Okay.
Which
I had Homer the Great.
Is that the Stonecutters episode?
Yeah, that's Stonecutters. I had Homer at the Bat
episode.
And then I've always just loved Lemon of Troy.
Shake out, boy.
Shake out, boy.
There's also the episode when Selma marries Troy McClure with Jeff Goldblum as his agent is wildly underrated.
Yeah, that's a good one too. I just feel like people don't like Patty and Selma episodes in general.
Yeah, but like the
people like Troy McClure episodes
really good.
So. Yeah. I don't like again, there's so many like
okay, well, almost like the Arrested Development thing. Do any of your do you think you would consider any episode post season 8?
Probably. I think there's some ones that I like. And again, this is probably has more to do with when I found The Simpsons. I was like 12, so that would have been 2006. So that's when the live episodes were season. Well, that would have been like season 15, 16 probably, but still like running in syndication everywhere. I was catching a lot of season 10, season 11, season 12 episodes. So I wasn't in the mindset yet of this is bad. I think, but there's just, if I really had to pick and choose my favorites though, like you're always going to end up back in like season 3, 4, 5, 6. That's
okay. So I think Last Exit to Springfield, the one where the power plant goes on strike, is kind of collectively revered as the best episode. Maybe not the funniest, but the best episode. What do you think people would pick as the best Simpsons episode? Is it Monorail?
Yeah, I think Monorail's probably up there. And I think too, just the lore of Monorail as well. Just like everyone knows it's a Conan episode. It's got the big musical numbers that people remember. Like it really just, it's in terms of gimmicks to make people remember an episode. And I feel like I'm degrading it. It's a great episode. But yeah, I would say that's probably like in a top 5 of every like weird internet site that's tried to do this. But it almost depends on the day. Like sort of to our Scrubs conversation. And we were saying like Scrubs is probably the only show where you're gonna find like sad episodes that'll make my top 3. I mean, The Simpsons has some incredible like emotional episodes. Like And Maggie Makes 3 is a fantastic episode.
Homer's mother.
Yep.
Most Lisa episodes.
Yeah. Even like Lisa on Ice is like, and you know, just having like I have a twin sister, but like a sister of similar age, and we always played sports together. Like that one always hit really hard, and it's also just funny to see like Snake tearing up and then destroying a hockey arena.
He wishes that they had Pee Wee hockey when he was a kid.
He does.
South Park. This was impossible. Because I think what do you think is going to win between these two? I think The Simpsons is going to win the vote.
Yeah, I would agree.
But South Park's longevity and still being good is very helpful to it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think for whatever reason, I found it easier to identify my clear favorite episodes of South Park versus my clear favorite episodes of The Simpsons. Not that it was like there's only a handful of them or anything like that, but for whatever reason, I mean, I have Scott Tenorman Must Die, Christian Rock Hard, and Casa Bonita are probably my top 3.
Casa Bonita was my my last cut for my top 3.
But even the fact that they went on to buy that restaurant is hilarious.
Scott Tenorman Must Die is probably the best episode.
It's just so deranged.
It's very deranged. And I mean, there's a reason that Cartman steamrolled people in becoming the best character. Like Cartman-centric episodes are generally the best episodes.
Yeah.
And I think
again, it's like
all 3 of yours are Cartman episodes.
Yeah, and like I had Osimo was a late cut. Good Times with Weapons? Yeah, Good Times with Weapons is a fun one. But even my favorite moment in that episode, and it's remembered for like you know, because you're on the air for 20 years. I know Community gets a lot of credit for this, and Scrubs actually did a bunch of this too, but sort of like playing with the genres and animation styles and stuff like that. Like they really went into the anime heavy in that episode. But the funniest part is Cartman thinking he has the power of invisibility and slowly crawling across a stage full of people absolutely naked. It's just such a funny visual gag. But also Butters getting a throwing star in the eye and then dressing him up like a dog so they can take him to the vet so they won't get in trouble. Just some great the Cartman Butters combination is such a, like, if you really just want to have an amazing episode, I feel like that was probably in their back pocket, just like, it's been 6 since we did a Cartman Butters episode, let's just like crank out a hit.
Essentially, if Cartman is centered at an episode, Randy's centered, although Randy's been gotten bad
Randy's
seasons.
gone to extremes.
Yeah, like he's been kind of ruined because they used him too much, or if Garrison's at the center of anything, especially lately, where he's just, after watching this season, just more Garrison the better.
Which is interesting because I almost felt like in the middle seasons I got a little tired of Garrison.
Yeah, but then he changed. Like, well, that's the fundamental thing about the show versus The Simpsons, is that it changed, which continued to make it great.
Yeah.
So
and again, just some of the people, like, not to say that, I mean, The Simpsons has obviously had one of the most illustrious writing staffs of any show of all time, but you know, it was like season 11 and 12 are just, famously they have a very small writer's room, but like it's just Matt and Trey and Bill Hader writing episodes. Okay, cool. I bet those turned out great.
So Trapped in the Closet was my last cut from the list. It wasn't Casablanca, which is just a very funny episode. But I had a very early episode about the goddamn succubus with Chef's parents and eating Tree Fitty and the Loch Ness Monster.
But
I used to get so high and watch that episode on DVD in college. It would be on loop in our apartment. It just over. I say about a Tree Fitty.
You know what?
Still cracks me.
My dad received a South Park box set season when we were kids, and it was season 3. So to the same extent, like that episode, the Rainforest episode is fantastic. There's a lot of episodes in that season actually that are really, really good. I feel like season 3 is when South Park really hit its stride.
Say goddamn Loch Ness Monster.
I say goddamn, I gave him Tree Fitty yesterday.
You gave him Tree Fitty? Well, I just tried to give him a little bit. So that one, I had the one where the baseball episode where Randy is fighting all of the other parrots is just amazing.
And that is Kyle's cousin is also a very good side character. He generally helps episodes a lot.
Who, our friend Arap?
Yeah, exactly.
Former producer of this show, Arap. And the other one I had was the Russell Crowe fighting around the world episode.
That's a good one.
With the Terrence and Phillip movie, or they're trying to watch the trailer to the Terrence and Phillip movie, and they have to go from house to house, and they just keep watching the Russell Crowe show.
I also like there are certain episodes of South Park that I love for very obvious reasons, but like the Going to Canada episode it's very funny for Canadians, I think. Like I'm sure it's also funny when Americans watched it, but like just the only road and just being an entire like just a really great parody. I don't know, there's so many the Imagination Land episodes, although I don't know like how you differentiate of the 3.
See, I always just kind of classify them as a movie.
Yeah, that's probably a better way to look at it.
Yeah, just, I mean, it was longer than bigger, longer, and uncut. And it's funny to like juxtapose those two together. Like when the movie hit the theaters, I mean, South Park, bigger, longer, uncut did great business. And it was a musical, which just was like not what people were expecting in 99. And then to Imagination Land, when it came out, that you can just kind of see the parallels of how the shows had shifted over that many years. Like there's no relation between those two things and even the characters at that point. Like Cartman is still Cartman. That's the one constant. Yeah,
Cartman is incredibly consistent. And again, like there are certain episodes you go back and watch now, and this'll happen when you have the production style that they had, where they could afford to be hyper relevant within that week, where, you know, there's like an entire episode that's a giant parody of You Got Served, like that certain people watch now and have no idea what that is conceivably referencing. Like that's the one thing about The Simpsons is obviously there's very hyper specific like pop culture references in The Simpsons, but entire episodes aren't built around hyper specific pop cultural references like South Park had.
No, and like in The Simpsons now, where it's been on so long, and most of the better episodes that people go back and revisit are from either the late 80s or early 90s, the references that they were using in those episodes weren't even current references. They were like graduate references and movies in the 70s. It's a lot like what I constantly say about Frasier is that it was weirdly outdated when it came on. Thus, when you go back and watch it, it doesn't seem like it's out of place.
Yeah, no, that's a good way to put it. And obviously the animations, being an animated show helps with that way more than sort of just the aesthetics of Frasier, which do not look modern by any means. But
no,
that's a good point.
Frasier's coming back apparently still. I haven't seen David Hyde Pierce in like 30 years.
I mean, he pops up in
he was the voice in Hellboy.
Wet Hot American Summer. I believe he's in the Wet Hot American Summer reboot as well.
Is he just sleeping on a stack of Frasier money?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. I mean,
I feel like Kelsey Grammer's career is far more interesting and far more terrifying to a certain extent.
Well, for a guy who made so much money, he's been married, I think, 5 times and never got a prenup.
Right.
That's amazing. And his wife was on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills for a while. Just amazing stuff. Amazing. Well, they were like getting divorced and just trashing Kelsey Grammer. But anyway, big influence on The Simpsons. Well, the one South Park I just remembered that popped in my mind, and this is why I like going back and forth with it, is the Jennifer Lopez Ben Affleck episode where Ben Affleck got super attracted to Jennifer Lopez, Cartman's hand.
Well, she did love tacos and burritos.
She did, yeah. Tacos and burritos. It's a great episode.
I will say
Kanye
too,
episode's pretty funny.
The Christian Hardrock episode, which I don't know if that might be my one that's like probably no one picks that as their favorite, but I find that episode hysterical.
Is that the one where they start the Butters, Token, and Cartman start the band?
Faith Plus One. It's the one where Cartman shows up to Token's house and goes, "Go down to the basement and get the bass guitar you have." And he's like, "I don't play bass guitar. There isn't a bass guitar in my basement." I'm like, God damn it, Token. Go down to the basement. Yeah, and just like and that's the concept too of taking like hit songs about like mostly sex and just replacing words like love with God. Just really, really funny. And then again, the payoff of like, very Cartman centric episode, but the bet specifically being the first to have a platinum record, but then finding out in Christian rock, even though you sold 1 million albums, you only get a Myrrh album. Very good.
The Office takes on Frasier. And Frasier's the 1 seed, Office is the 2 seed. Clearly misseeded because, as I've mentioned before, that The Office is going to roll here. So here are my top 3. I actually have 4 because I put 2 of them together. Although I will say that the single funniest moment in Office history is from the British Office when Ricky Gervais is doing that dance for charity. And it is the most cringeworthy 45 seconds of television of all time. Like just go like just YouTube it. I mean, you can watch all 12 episodes of the British Office. They're great. But just his and everyone's just think about how cringy Michael Scott is and then turn it up to worse. 1 million with David Brent.
So much worse. That is an interesting to think about. It's just people who, I guess it's probably most people watch the American Office first and then find the British Office. But like the transition is made so much easier in the opposite direction. Yeah. Okay. So what are your top 3?
So mine are The Dinner Party's number 1 with a bullet. It's not even close.
That was also my number 1.
The Dundies is number 2.
Yep. I had that in my top 3.
And I had Beach Games and or Casino Night as my number 3.
I think Casino Night was like my last cut. I have Fun Run. I think that's a 2-parter, so that might even be cheating. I think
if it's a 2-part episode, it counts. It'd be like doing a Star Trek The Next Generation ranking and having, oh no, I really like Best of Both Worlds Part 2, but Part 1's not making the list.
It's one episode. Has to be there.
When they release them on a VHS box set, they come together.
That's a good point. But yeah, I think Dinner Party and the Dundies. I again, this might just be what we've been saying this whole time. Like first thing that comes to mind, and those 2 episodes are pretty iconic. But I think those are pretty clearly the top 2.
is the dinner party, it's kind of known as the best Office episode, but I can't imagine that it's the most popular Office episode because it's fucking dark.
Yeah, you might be right. Although I don't know, to me, that's what like separates it so much from most Office episodes. And that's why it tends to stand out. I also just like it has hilarious moments too. Like just the bit of him like
him having the 13-inch plasma.
I was gonna say the little tiny plasma TV is
gag.
just incredible. Oh man.
Like if you enjoyed that episode and haven't seen the British Office, outside of like the first 6 episodes of The Office, which are almost like word for word remakes of episodes of the British Office, which don't work whatsoever. No. And people hated Michael Scott because he was an asshole and had no charisma because he was trying to be David Brent. And then Michael Scott just got to evolve into his own, I don't even know if it's a better character, but it's a much more long-lasting character that people actually liked. No one liked David Brent. No one.
No.
But if you
that's the thing I was saying. Like, I think people who watch the American Office first, then went to go watch The Office, were expecting to like that character at some point, when that is never the point. You will never come around to David Brent.
You will never, like, the only like reasonable character on that show is Tim, aka Jim in the American Office. And even he's a dickhead. Like, Jim is a dickhead in the like American Office, but like he's a likable dickhead. There's no one's likable on The Office in the UK. And it's, I mean, that's kind of consistent with British television by and large, especially British comedy. But I just like, if you can't handle the Michael, like some people don't like The Office because they find Michael Scott too cringe. And like they have a very uncomfortable sense of watching it. But it's like sugar-coated cringe. Like David Brent is pure cringe.
Exactly. In the American Office that by the end of the episode, things are mostly going to be okay. Even like Scott's Tots, that episode like ties in a somewhat neat bow at the end. Like it's all going to be relatively okay. And it's interesting that like, they're basically sister shows, The Office and Parks and Recreation in both their production team and their production style, but they made the exact same mistake with Leslie Knope. It was just so interesting that they did not learn their lesson at all in doing The Office and then trying to do it with Parks and Rec, where, they completely changed that character by the midpoint of the second season, where, she's even sort of like in the Michael Scott vein of almost incompetent in the first like 3 or 4 episodes.
That was the biggest change that they made to that character, was to make her hyper competent. And
exactly.
it just changed how you saw the character you're right, for the better. I mean, it's not like people in season 4 of Parks and Rec were like, who we need more of? Bring back Mark Brandanowitz. See more of him.
Or like Mark Brandanaquits.
Whatever happened to that? Like, what was the story behind that?
I don't know. I mean, I would have to assume that they just did a self-assessment and were like, this guy's like, he sort of looks like Jim, I guess. That was that a thing? Was that his redeeming quality? And they're like, hey, we can get Adam Scott to come in and do this, but better. And they were like, yeah, let's do that.
I mean, I like the first 2 seasons of that show, but the moment that Rob Lowe and Adam Scott get there, it's better than The Office.
Oh, it's an entirely different show. Yeah.
But I find it funnier than The Office.
I agree.
From like seasons like 3 to 5, although seasons 2, 3, 4, and 5 of The Office are pretty untouchable.
They're very good. Again, we're splitting hairs here.
Yeah, these are the final 8 here.
Yeah.
Frasier. You've never watched all through of Frasier, have you?
So this is the thing. I'm just gonna leave the floor to you. I've never watched all of Frasier. I did watch episodes with my dad when I was a kid. So I know I'd enjoy it.
This is the Frasier problem, is that people who are now our age, I mean, I'm older than you. You're what, 30?
31.
31. Jesus, you're 31. You're old now.
Yeah.
Fuck. I'm almost 40. So anyway, Frasier was on when I was like 10. And it was winning Emmys for best show on TV, and everyone just thought it was hilarious. And it would come on in syndication like after The Simpsons in a lot of spots. And you'd watch it and be like, I don't get this. Like, this is very clearly for adults. And most people still have that like negative feeling towards Frasier and just never revisited it. But it is, as an adult, fucking hilarious. Especially if you take yourself very seriously, like I do, and are pretty pretentious, like I am. It's perfect. It's a perfect send-up.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's definitely one of those shows I know I should go back and rewatch. But you're right. I think it really, I wasn't watching it live. I was mostly watching it in syndication. I know the Comedy Network up in Canada used to play it all the time on like Saturday and Sunday mornings. And my default setting was to just turn on the Comedy Network and sort of like smile and nod my way through this show. I'm like, yes. But it's interesting because they also had, I remember they used to pair with news radio a lot.
Which I love.
But I think a much easier show for like a 9-year-old to try and digest. So I gravitated far more to news radio than I did Frasier. And even in a funny way, I remember in elementary school, sort of a similar thing where it hasn't flipped yet in that sense. But I will watch Frasier one day.
Maybe make that a thing. Watch like the first 2 seasons of Frasier. See what you think.
It's very easy because you know what? I sometimes you struggle to find a show. You'll know this with your wife, but it's hard to find a show that you watch together because then you have to be watching it together. I can say definitively that my partner will not want to watch Frasier, so I can definitely just watch that at my own pace and leisure. But I remember I used to watch. I'd come over from school at lunch, and TBS would have Family Guy and Futurama back to back in that hour stretch.
That's good.
And I used to Family Guy. I was like, I'm about Family Guy. This is great. Futurama's all right, but Family Guy. And then 5 years go by, and I'm like, Futurama is so much better.
Yeah.
Just superior in almost every way.
It's funny because of the Seth MacFarlane shows, like, I eventually just gave up on Family. It's funny because I went to go do my top 3. For some reason, I thought that Family Guy was in the Elite 8 and had not lost to The Office. And I went to go pick my 3 favorite Family Guy episodes. Like, I have no clue. Like, I have no point of reference for this anymore.
I mean, there's no plot.
Like, I just stopped watching that show and just started watching American Dad instead.
I would just like the episode where they go to the brewery and it's just a send up of Charlie and the
Willy
Chocolate
Wonka.
Factory. Yeah.
So the 3 that I went with, and they're all like mistaken identity. I mean, Frasier played in the realm of mistaken identity all the time. So number 3, sorry, I had the Ski Lodge episode where there's like seven of them in a rented cabin, and different people are trying to hook up with different people. The ski instructor's gay, and he thinks that Frasier is also gay because Frasier was trying to hit on the woman that he thought was in the ski instructor's room. It's just, 22 minutes of craziness and just stuff going awry. Very funny episode. There's also an episode where they go to the opera because it's Frasier, and he brings his dad with him, who does not want to go to the opera.
I can imagine.
And then at like halftime at the opera, they go out into like whatever area it is, and Frasier's hitting on this woman who's also in the balcony and meets up with her. And her uncle is there, and her uncle is gay, and he thinks that Frasier's dad is gay. So they all go back to Frasier's apartment afterwards, where Frasier thinks that he's there to be with the woman, but the uncle thinks he's there to be with Frasier's dad. And then Niles comes in, and Frasier's dad has to pretend like Niles is his younger boyfriend. And then Niles decides he doesn't want to be a part of the ruse anymore, so he breaks up with him.
It's a very 90s concept that just any like put together pretentious man. I feel like the homosexual sort of mix up happens quite a bit in those like early 90s sitcoms.
It was a theme on Frasier over and over. And then the other one was Frasier was dating a Jewish woman, and he didn't realize that she was Jewish. So he had her over for Christmas before her, and her mother was coming with her, and her mother didn't approve of her dating anyone who wasn't Jewish. So he finds out within like 10 minutes of them coming over, and they just have Christmas stuff all over. And Niles is playing Jesus in a pageant that's going on upstairs and just periodically pops in during the episode. It's great.
All right. I'll maybe even tonight. Who knows? I'll start knocking out some Frasier and let you know.
I can't remember if the first season's any good, because that's always the thing about almost all of these. I'm trying to think of the 8 shows that we talked about. Arrested Development very clearly has the best first season.
You know what, too? It's kind of strange to say it because we sort of walked into this by saying like definitively this is the only show that's not making the next round. Scrubs' first season is very good.
Yeah.
Scrubs is immediately a good show.
Yeah. Arrested Development, Scrubs. I would say that's very clearly the top 2 in terms of best first seasons. Curb isn't that far behind, but I mean, I picked an episode from season 1 to be on my list. But I would say that most people, if they told you to rewatch Curb, be like, yeah, you could probably skip season 1.
Yeah, I would think so. Curb and South Park are actually very similar in that sense, where I just feel like the send-ups and the sort of conceits of the episodes just got crazier and more outlandish and therefore more memorable. That you sort of forget the simpler conceits of like the first couple of seasons with both those shows.
So yeah, Frasier, I think Frasier gets going. Like The Office season 1 is objectively bad. Seinfeld.
Well, how much of the writing staff of Cheers like went over to Frasier?
I don't know. There was a lot of Simpsons writers who left The Simpsons to write on Frasier.
Oh, interesting.
Like Jake Hogan was a big writer on the Simpsons, and then he from like the first 4 seasons. Like a lot of writers from the first 4 seasons would like pop in and out on Frasier too.
But I would just assume like Frasier of most shows going into a season 1, at least like the lead character is a clearly defined character.
Yeah, but that's not true though, because the Frasier of Cheers isn't really that much like the Frasier of Frasier.
He's not very flushed out in Cheers.
He is, but he's different. Like it's just a completely new setting. Like,
yeah,
I mean, it's all about his family dynamic and his profession, where he's a doctor and like a drunk sitting in a bar in Cheers.
Yeah,
he's now a radio personality with his family who he hasn't seen in ages, moving back to Seattle. Simpsons, like you don't have to watch season. No, just pass. I don't think that you need to watch season 2 of The Simpsons either. Like there's 2 good episodes, maybe.
But I do wonder too how much of our hesitance with season 1 and season 1, season 2 of South Park and The Simpsons is just purely like the animation style as well.
It's funny because I missed the old animation of The Simpsons, but from like season 5, season 6, where it was still like drawn animation, not computer animation. It's not. I mean, South Park will never look bad because South Park looks bad, although it looks much better than it used to. But it intentionally looks bad.
Sure, but the first couple seasons are. I mean, I think the first season they still might be almost using like
cardboard
cutouts.
Maybe.
The computer animation South Park, I don't know what it is when I'm watching those episodes. I'm just like, yeah, these are just better because I enjoy them watching them more.
Yeah, season 1 of Curb is like okay. Like I said, The Office is just skippable. It has
I think it's only 6 episodes, isn't it?
Yeah, it has Diversity Day. That's one you could watch, which is like a episode.
Yeah.
And Frasier, I don't really remember, but yeah, Arrested Development and Scrubs are very clearly the easiest shows just to pick up from the first episode and go.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at this entire list, I wonder what is like the best first seasons of shows ever. I think Homeland takes the cake for that.
I mean, Homeland's first season is
Homeland's first season, if it ended like it was supposed to, and it was just 1 season, we would talk about Homeland like we talk about The Wire, like we talk about Sopranos, Mad Men.
I assume he was literally just going to
blow himself up. Yeah. And they were like, Showtime was like, we might need some seasons out of this show.
that would have been incredible.
Yeah, like that. Like it's hard to. Because I mean, Homeland was on for so long. It was like what was the Lithgow season of Dexter? Season 4.
Season 4.
Yeah. Like if it just ended after that, apparently it came back and like it wasn't bad. But like Homeland just went on forever.
Yeah, I was watching Homeland when it was on, but it wasn't like an obsession of mine. So recently, I think early pandemic, so not even recently, I was watching it with Carly, and the first season is just so incredible. And then even season 2, it's just not the same. And I think we bowed out about 5 or 6 episodes into season 3. It's just like it doesn't quite capture you the same way.
Trying to look at the list. I can't believe how well Home Improvement did in this bracket. Blows my mind.
Really
I didn't realize people. I mean, it drew an easy draw, but still, I didn't realize that people just had this affinity for Tim Allen.
It's a very odd show. Like there's nothing especially unique or memorable about Home Improvement aside from the
it's
yeah,
but that might be it. Those might be the shows with the 2 best first seasons of a comedy.
Yeah, I mean it's hard. It's really hard. Although I did just watch the entirety of Clone High again, and every episode is a banger.
I have one because I think it's the best season of the shows, Eastbound and Down.
Oh yeah, Yeah. You know what? I think there's a weird case to be made that the best 2 episodes of Eastbound and Down might
The
be
first
within
two?
the first 3 episodes.
Yeah, it's crazy. Just like Kenny Powers was a sensation, and then it just to me, for some people, it never got old. It got really old for me very quickly.
I just think it was at its funniest when he was having
nobody.
to sort of just live with the fact he was a washed up pitcher. And then when you can't keep in those situations forever, obviously, but like, yeah, I don't think the setting ever got better than the first season of Eastbound. It was just perfect. And then
Mhm.
obviously, like, the Ashley Schaefer stuff is just unassailably hilarious.
And the very first episode we did in this series talked about the South bracket with Modern Family and The Simpsons. Adam Azer was on it with Sia and myself, and Azer messaged me like he couldn't believe that Friends and Modern Family got eliminated as quickly as they did as one seeds. I was like, "What internet are you on?"
Yeah. I mean, we talked about that. I said something along the lines of like Modern Family is a good show, but it shouldn't be anyone's favorite show.
No,
Like,
it
it's
really
just
should.
it's just there.
I mean, they both got mad at me that I called it the stupid person's Arrested Development, but I stand by that. It's an easier to handle Arrested Development. Like it's the same basic concept of a giant family dynamic, but it's not mean spirited like Arrested Development is. The jokes are slower, the
Yeah.
jokes are nicer, and everything is just contained to 22 minutes. Then you can move on to next week.
That's the thing. It's just its pace is just so entirely different. And look, people always, I guess they always need that. Like, look, I'll take an episode of Modern Family over an episode of Big Bang Theory 10 times out of 10. But
Well, okay, but I feel like if we talk about like peak TV or class TV, we like the shows that are left are collectively known as the best of the best. Yeah. I don't think that Modern Family is that, but it's the best version of what you just talked about. It's the best version of a background show of all time. Like
yeah.
Two and a Half Men is a background show.
Yeah.
How I Met Your Mother is a glorified background show. Friends is a glorified
that sort of straddles. Show. It had it flirted with being very good television for about a season and a half. But
yeah, I would agree. But like Everyone Loves Raymond, background show.
Yeah. Oh, incredibly.
I'm trying to think the other ones, but like they get propped because they were so popular. That 70s show is another one. Like that 70s show just isn't good, but people have this weird nostalgia for it. Like you very clearly have not watched.
That's nostalgia built on nostalgia, right?
Yeah, like you clearly haven't seen a second of this show in 25 years because it's bad.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's the Home Improvement thing though too. Like it's funny that Home Improvement made it farther than Modern Family, but Home Improvement again is just one of those like, okay, sure, it's on in the background.
Home Improvement benefited from no one voting for Cosby.
That is, you know what? I forgot that it faced off with the Cosby Show in round 1. Yeah, that's probably the biggest reason here.
Yeah, just trying to look at the other ones. What were the like 2 shows that you were mad about the most that you knew that they weren't going to move on, but you would have had them moving on as a Community?
Yeah, but I even went into this process saying about Community. One, I mean, it's in a bracket with Arrested and in a bracket with Curb, and I think it got beaten by Curb.
It did,
or maybe Arrested. Mostly it was that it was a 10 seed, but look, Community, I'm more than willing to say like really wide swaths of quality in terms of the 6th season run of that show.
You were like, when I met you, you loved Community.
Oh, and that's because I believe we went to college during season 2 and season 3 of Community, which to me are incredible 100th percentile seasons of television. But then that's what it has. It has those 2 seasons, which are fantastic and not a ton else.
The ones that like they're actually both in like the same region. And King of the Hill lost to Eastbound and Down, but
yeah,
King of the Hill remains wildly underrated.
King of the Hill, it's coming back too.
Oh yeah, everything's got to come back these days. But
that's what it was. I was trying to think of my peak, just as one of the 4 people on the planet who still has cable, and there's really nothing on because the rights to everything are now sold to streaming companies. So there's just not much in syndication on these networks anymore. But the one show that keeps popping up that's sort of like this is on, it'll just work in the background, And this goes back to our earlier Jerry Stiller sort of conversation, but King of Queens. King of Queens is a very I just need something on. But it's still airing. It's still airing on so many networks.
I'm trying to think, what are the big syndication shows? Like Friends is always on, Seinfeld's always on, The Simpsons is always on, Frasier is always on. Like those four are always on.
It's Friends, and I mean now it's The Big Bang Theory. It's on everywhere.
So 30 Rock,
maybe Young Sheldon. I don't know.
Oh, 30 Rock drew The Office, so it would never had a chance of winning, but 30 Rock's a funnier show than The Office is.
Yeah, 30 Rock's a better show than The Office.
Just
though 30 Rock also seasons 4 and 5 are not the best, but
no,
stuck the landing in season 6, and also even the not the best seasons of 30 Rock are still hilarious.
And I guess the other one is almost sort of like what you had with Community when it lost to Curb. Like Brooklyn Nine-Nine lost in the first round. Brooklyn Nine-Nine is amazing.
Oh, Brooklyn Nine-Nine's fantastic.
But it's a very acquired taste, I feel.
And that also, Brooklyn Nine-Nine is sort of the spiritually and almost literally, because I think it did go back to NBC for one of the last seasons, but a show completely produced and made by, the NBC corporation and Saturday Night Live. Like that would have been the last great show of the Thursday night NBC block, but it, they didn't want it and they ended up airing on Fox.
The one show that didn't make the bracket that, I've already expressed my concern about why this wasn't included, but if Veep was in this bracket, how well do you think Veep would have done? Because I actually think it's not well.
Yeah, I don't think it's very well. Veep's tough because I feel like Veep is actually sort of, we might have already talked about this, but I feel like Veep is sort of the 2010s version of Arrested, where
it's a mix of Arrested Development and Seinfeld.
But it won just in the way that it, like, critically acclaimed. Like there was no place not telling you to watch Veep. It was winning every Emmy, and yet people just still did not watch Veep for whatever reason.
It's so mean.
Oh, it's incredibly mean-spirited.
And just that's when you make a show that is that mean-spirited, you alienate so much of your audience off the hop. Like a good example of that is the Pat Mayo Experience. Some people just can't watch the show because they find it too mean. I don't blame them. If that's not your style of consuming content, of people being dickheads to one another all the time, then I get it. But you do, like, I remember I talked to Mike Wright about this at like one of the conferences. Like when we first started, like the footballers and my show were like, the only two fantasy football shows outside of the ESPN and CBS ones that there were. People can argue it gives out better advice. It's much better. People find it funnier, but there's something far more wholesome about Mike and Andy and Jason than me, you, Jeff, and Gust. Like it's just a different vibe. And
I don't think they were
permanently
banning people every single week.
Ensuring that people will never watch the show again by banning them from doing it. Like
it's for life.
It's just two different sides of really the same coin of what we're talking about, especially how we both branched out. But they're also, I find them hilarious, but it's just, it's a completely different type of humor. It's far more inclusive in the humor rather than just purely trying to alienate everyone.
They are the Modern Family, and you are the Arrested Development.
There we are. So I'm bound to be canceled soon. Well, they'll have another like 2-decade run. That actually tracks.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. All right, Garion Thorne. Check him at DraftKings. You're still at DraftKings, right? You're wearing the hat.
Yep.
Me too.
I think we rebranded now. I think we're DraftKings. One sec, I want to get this right. DraftKings Network is what we are now.
The DraftKings Network, not featuring the Pat Mayo Experience.
Yeah, it's fine. It's all good. I know what's going on. I'm in meetings. No, I'm not. DraftKings at Garion Thorne. A couple months left of the fantasy baseball season, pumping out that kind of content. It's fun. Watch baseball.
They still play baseball?
Yeah, I know. Shocking.
I thought it was just done in like a simulation now.
No, it's faster now. They changed the rules. It's better.
That actually sounds
Remember Alf?
I remember how like triggered I would get when I covered like full-time baseball. Be like, this game's not going to end till 3 a.m. This is awful.
Yeah, God, used to write like 4,000 word articles about baseball. People probably don't even believe that.
I don't even know 4,000 words anymore. That's fact. That is a very factual thing. The only time I actually write long columns is for golf majors now. And they're basically the same column every year. Just recycle all the words that I've already written. Something I got caught for in college and charged with plagiarism, but it never stuck. It's like, what? How can it be plagiarism if I'm plagiarizing myself? They're like, well, it is, but like, we'll let you get away with it. Don't worry about it.
We see the irony here.
There it is. At Garion Thorne on Twitter, at the PME on Twitter. You can vote in the best show poll for the best sitcom down in the description, or at the PME on Twitter. Voting is open for a week. So please go do that. Make your voice heard. Cast a vote in the best sitcom bracket poll. And in the comment section, give me like your favorite of each of the 8 shows that are left. Maybe not the best, but your favorite moments from those. I'm excited to hear them because I love reminiscing about things that I really like. And I do love all 8 of these shows. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm Pat Mayo. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.
Mayo Experience! Experience!